Hey there YouTube, Wrestling Optimus here, back with another action figure review. It's been a full week since the wrestling world was rocked by the events of Winter is Coming. Not only did Sting debut, but Kenny Omega beat Jon Moxley for the AEW World title, then immediately took off with the belt and Impact's Don Callis. Yet, tonight's show might be even more stacked, featuring, among other things, interviews with the aforementioned Kenny Omega, Sting, and even Shaq. Plus, Orange Cassidy vs MJF for the Dynamite Diamond Ring, so it should be a good one. But first, if you're new here, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more pro wrestling and action figure content. Now, we're headed into my custom dailies place, so for a recap and review, let's take it over to the action figures. Dynamite opens with the much-anticipated match between the AEW Tag Team Champions, the Young Bucks, and the Hybrid 2. Beforehand, Dasha asks Matt and Nick about Kenny, but they haven't seen or talked to him in over a week. They're jumped by TH2, who skip their Mountain Dew-themed entrance. There's no way I could possibly recap this match move by move. These are four of the best athletes in the company, and they were flying around the ring from the very start. Nick hits Angelico with a springboard piledriver, while Matt throws Jack Evans at the Acclaimed in a bit of revenge for their attack last week. Later, they hit a Doomsday device and a superkick party on Angelico, but somehow he kicks out. After Matt suffers an apparent knee injury, the ref goes to check on him, only for Jack Evans to flip off the ref's knee into a Spike Rana. Then, he hits Nick with a 450 splash to the outside. Back in the ring, Angelico sinks in the Navarro death roll on Matt's injured knee until thankfully his brother is able to make the save. A Meltzer driver from the ring to the outside takes out Jack Evans. Then, another super kick party followed by a BTE trigger finally puts down Angelico for the victory. The Acclaimed jump the barricades and try to attack the Bucks, but SCU runs out and keeps them at bay. That could be a really good old vs new rivalry. Darby Allin's latest black and white vignette shows him doing ink blot tests. In each picture, he sees a different member of Team Taz, but doesn't identify them by name. Instead, he calls Ricky Starks a wolf in sheep's clothing, Will Hobbs is a snake in the grass, and Brian Cage is a puppet. But he's also the #1 contender. Allin agrees to give Cage a TNT title shot as long as it's one-on-one. The final ink blot looks like Sting. Darby just chuckles and grins. Oh my god, don't tease me! I want them together now! Tony Schiavone comes out for the first time tonight and is joined by Cody Rhodes. He asks for his thoughts on Sting's surprise debut last week, but before he can answer, the lights go dark and out walks the Icon. Arn Anderson excuses himself as Tony hands the mic to Sting. However, in a break from character, he gleefully demands a hug from his old pal instead, eliciting laughter from the crowd. Then, he asks Tony to give one of his classic, "It's Sting!" calls, which gets a "This is awesome" chant. Cody cuts to the chase and hints at a match between them, but Sting's not here for Cody. He claims there's something very familiar about this place as he points his bat directly at Darby Allin, sitting high up in the stands, brooding just like Sting used to do back in the day. Sting reflects on how his career has come full circle and brought him back to TNT. When Cody still seems disappointed, he confirms that he plans to stay with AEW for a long time. Then, he pulls Cody in close, and in an almost foreboding tone of voice, says, "See you around, kid," before leaving. That was so awesome. I'm speechless. All of Team FTW is backstage for a promo. Taz mocks what just happened and claims that last week, Tony Khan needed Sting to save his Golden Boys. Ricky Starks announces that Taz's son, Hook, has ditched Cody and is now training at their dojo. Newly formed team, the Varsity Blondes, are out to take on FTR. Their name is a nod to Brian Pillman Sr.'s tag team with Steve Austin, the Hollywood Blondes, and Griff Garrison's supposed Ivy League education. The contrast in styles between this technical match and the Young Bucks high-flying match earlier in the night is striking. FTR get up to their old tricks, with Tully interfering behind the ref's back. Brian Pillman Jr. is fairly impressive early on, but holy shit, Griff Garrison's hot tag is amazing. He absolutely cleans house before finally getting countered by Dax. In the end, FTR hits the Goodnight Express for the win. They get in the face of Jurassic Express on their way to the back. Alex Marvez is hanging out with Hangman Adam Page in his natural habitat, the bar. He asks who his partners will be for the 6-man tag team match next week against Matt Hardy and Private Party. Before he can answer though, John Silver and Alex Reynolds pop up from behind the bar with kids' cowboy hats on. In case you haven't been following BTE, Dark Order have been trying to recruit Page lately. He reluctantly agrees to tag with them this one time, but swears he's not joining Dark Order. Sure, cowboy. Speaking of Dark Order, they join number 10 on stage ahead of his match against Dustin Rhodes. 10 gets in a few shots, but Dustin wins with a running bulldog. Evil Uno comes back out with Dark Order and compliments Dustin's historic career while pointing out that he's always been overshadowed. Even here in AEW, he's the third most important Rhodes. So he invites Dustin to take his rightful place in Dark Order as number 7. Oh my god, for those of you who don't know, Dustin played a character named Seven back in WCW that was basically a child predator, and he absolutely hated it, famously breaking kayfabe in a shoot promo on Nitro. Despite that, he slowly begins making the Dark Order hand gesture, then slaps Evil Uno across the face. Uno simply says, "When you understand, you'll come begging for it." If they purposefully saved the number 7 just to make this reference, then bravo, but I do not want to see Dustin Rhodes in Dark Order. Tony Schiavone is back, this time with Brandy Rhodes and basketball megastar Shaquille O'Neal. Shaq says he's known Jade Cargill for a long time and wants to see her do big things, but he didn't appreciate what she did to Brandy's arm, which is still in a sling. Obviously, Brandy didn't either and felt disrespected by Jade's comments. However, she's hoping they can find a way to put this all behind them. Tony suggests a match on Dynamite. Although Shaq admits his beef with Cody is just fun and games, he'd actually like to see Brandy vs. Jade. He says maybe Brandy can even get some tips from Jade. That only offends her more. She calls him an overgrown asshole and throws a glass of water in his face before storming out. Chris Jericho leads out the Inner Circle for their ultimatum. They've had 7 days to decide if they're going to stay together or disband for good. This all stems from their infighting ever since MJF and Wardlow joined the group. Jericho asks what everyone thinks. MJF steps forward and says he's not stupid. He hears all the chatter on social media saying that he's trying to break up the Inner Circle, but he chose to join because he wants to be part of the greatest faction in pro wrestling history. Sammy isn't buying it though, and brings up the towel incident from last week. MJF tries to blame Sammy for that, but Jericho reminds him that they all watched Dynamite. He knows what actually happened. Ortiz says MJF and Wardlow are assets to the group, but Max's personality, not so much. So he totally gets Sammy's frustration. But, for the good of the group, Sammy needs to shake MJF's hand. He hesitates and warns both MJF and Jericho that if even one more thing happens, he's quitting. Then, he reluctantly shakes hands. Out of nowhere, Hager speaks up and hilariously asks why Wardlow is always staring at him. Wardlow says Hager is the one always staring at him. So, like a parent scolding their kids, Jericho suggests they both just agree to stop staring at each other. Hager brilliantly responds that he can stop whenever he wants. Finally, instead of just putting their hands in as a show of solidarity, they all put their middle fingers in. I loved this. Alex Marvez is back with FTR and Tully Blanchard. Cash tries to take responsibility for losing the titles at All Out, but Tully says it was because he wasn't there to support them. Together, they're invincible, unlike all those flippy teams like Jurassic Express, who they confronted earlier. Their goal remains the same, AEW Tag Team Gold. Next is a 6-man tag team match with Eddie Kingston, The Butcher, and The Blade versus Lance Archer and the Lucha Bros. Archer is the last to enter and immediately takes out the other team with a diving crossbody. Once things get settled down, Pentagon is put through a table at ringside and has to be helped to the back by officials. Meanwhile, Phoenix plays the babyface in peril as Kingston's family isolates him in their corner. When Archer does come in, my first thought was, Griff Garrison's hot tag is so much better. During a commercial break, Lance injures his leg, rolling to the outside. Phoenix tags in and does his best, but it's essentially 3-on-1. Butcher and Blade hit their powerbomb neckbreaker combo and get the win. They celebrate in the ring afterwards until Archer attacks from behind. He lays out the Butcher and the Blade, but Eddie escapes unharmed. Cameras cut back to the locker room, where Jade Cargill and Nyla Rose are beating up Red Velvet this time, as Vicky Guerrero cheers them on. Big Swole and Serena Deeb rush in, but they're attacked by Ivelisse and Diamante. Officials have to separate everyone. Abadon eerily crawls to the ring to take on AEW Dark standout Tesha Price, who looks terrified. It's a squash match. Abadon wins using her cool finisher, which I don't know the name of. Then, she starts repeatedly slamming Tesha's head onto the mat until Hikaru Shida makes the save with her kendo stick. She cracks Abadon over the head with it and goes to help Tesha, but Abadon sits up Undertaker style. Horrified, both women bolt for the tunnel. Kenny Omega and Don Callis arrive by fucking helicopter. Well, I guess now we know what Tony Khan meant about Kenny's travel arrangements. Marvez tries to get a word, but they blow him off. Here are tonight's Omega Fun Facts presented by Justin Roberts. Kenny is the first AEW wrestler to win both the World and Tag Team titles, and is the first AEW wrestler to pin Jon Moxley. He's held 17 different singles championships, is on a 12-match winning streak, and is undefeated in sanctioned AEW singles competition for the last 462 days. He was the first AEW wrestler to appear on Impact Wrestling and took the scenic route to get here just so he could fly over North Carolina. Tony Schiavone has some questions for the champ, like what happened to the gentleman's agreement. But first, addressing Don Callis, he says he's been in the wrestling business since 1983 and he's never been more disgusted. Don doesn't care though. In fact, that was a lesson for Tony Khan not to trust anybody in this business. He goes on to basically repeat his promo from Impact, calling it the biggest screw job since Montreal and claiming that he's been the invisible hand in Kenny Omega's career ever since he was 10 years old. Callis even takes credit for creating AEW before handing the mic off to Omega. Kenny claims to have been working on this behind the scenes for over a year, but the only person who needed to fall for it was Moxley. He did real damage to Kenny's eye, but couldn't keep up with Kenny's brains. Then, Omega points out, as I did on Twitter, that he may have used a microphone, but he won the match clean with a one-winged angel, the most protected move in all of wrestling. Finally, for the first time on Dynamite, Kenny delivers his classic send-off. I must bid you adieu, goodbye, and good night. Bang! In the main event, MJF, with the entire inner circle at ringside, takes on freshly squeezed Orange Cassidy. Right away, to show this is serious, MJF rips off Cassidy's sunglasses, breaks them, and throws them into the crowd. He dodges an orange punch, causing Cassidy to bust his hand on the ring post. At one point, MJF distracts the ref, allowing the inner circle to beat up Cassidy on the outside, while Jericho keeps best friends away with his baseball bat. So, during the commercial, Trent and Chuck go to the back and get more baby faces, including Brandon Cutler, Sonny Kiss, Top Flight, and the Varsity Blondes, turning this into what JR calls an impromptu lumberjack match. MJF continues targeting Cassidy's fingers until he decides to pull the old Eddie Guerrero trick by making it seem like Orange Cassidy used a weapon, in this case Jericho's bat. But when he drops to the mat, Cassidy simply puts his hands in his pockets to show that he couldn't have done it. When MJF stands up and grabs the bat, Orange falls to the floor, just as the ref turns back around. However, because he didn't see it, the ref doesn't call for the DQ. The distraction does allow Cassidy to hit the beach break, but MJF kicks out. An orange punch proves to be just as effective, so he hits a second, but Wardlow puts MJF's foot on the rope. This leads to a full-blown brawl between the heels and faces at ringside. While the ref attempts to deal with that, suddenly Miro runs out and decapitates Orange Cassidy with a massive clothesline. MJF crawls over, makes the cover, and wins back his Dynamite Diamond Ring. Best friends attack Miro and Kip Sabian on the stage as security finally comes out. Miro beats a bunch of them up, while MJF screams into the camera that he won clean in the middle of the ring.
And the talent agent, he just sits there for the longest time. And finally he says, "Jesus, that's a hell of an act, what do you call it?" And the father says, "The Aristocrats."
That was a ridiculously jam-packed episode. I knew we'd get to hear Kenny Omega, Sting, and Shaq speak, and we'd get to see a Young Bucks match, but I completely forgot about the Inner Circle's ultimatum, Abadon in action, and that main event for the Diamond Ring. That just goes to show Dynamite is by far the best and most consistent wrestling product on TV right now. The wrestling itself is incredible, and there's something for everyone. The characters are equally diverse and are, for the most part, used correctly. Storylines are intricate, not dumbed down, and feel momentous, like so many of the Attitude Era. Yet this feels like only the beginning. I don't know where this is going, but so far, it's one hell of a ride. Alright, that will do it for AEW Dynamite on TNT. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know what you thought in the comments down below. I don't have any plans to make a video this weekend, unless I finally get around to building a new WWE stage, so check back next Thursday for another action figure review. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to do all that normal YouTube stuff. Smash the like button, share with any wrestling or action figure fans you may know, subscribe to the channel, and spread the word. You can also talk to me over on Twitter at PSUOptimus, or see all my best figure photography over on Instagram at WrestlingOptimus. If you haven't seen my most recent build video, you can check that out right here. But until next time, I've been Wrestling Optimus, and I'll catch you later.